Next guest this morning, who's Jasveer Singh. Jasveer Singh is, of course, from the Sikh Press Association, is a friend of the show. Jasveer, good morning.
Good morning, Aman. How's it going?
I was going to say it's going pretty well, but to be honest, I'm feeling rather. I don't know. I shouldn't confess this, really, should I? But I'm feeling rather gloomy. I'm looking at all these. Horrific and heroic pictures from yesterday. I'm looking at the one of the victims has been identified, and I'm feeling rather gloomy about it all. But I have to say, at the same time, Jasveer, since you ask, I'm also looking up at some screens in the studio where I sit, and I can see Britain's democracy and the green benches of the House of Commons, where the Prime Minister's given a very dignified speech, and I feel like, actually, you know what, Britain's democracy will survive this. That's what's going through my mind, Jasveer. What's going through yours?
A lot of the same, and also wondering how we progress, because today in the office that I share with my colleagues that work with the charity Everything's 13, we watched a video from the founder of the Sikh Press Association, Jasveer Singh, about the Lee Rigby issue that happened in 2013, and everything that he said in that video, which is now 4 years old, is more or less still applicable to this day. So I'm wondering, where is the progression, and how do we progress, and how do we connect with those that are looking to lash out at British society for whatever reason? And that's what's going through my mind right now.
And do you feel that, obviously Britain's society is strong enough and stable enough and resilient enough to overcome these sorts of horrors, but do you feel that in the coming discussion, Jasveer, because these stories, I'm afraid to say we've had so many of these shocking incidents over the years, that we do know that these stories follow the same kind of narrative arc, don't they? There's the initial shock and horror, the search for information, the desperate desire to hope that everyone's okay. Yeah. Then there's the pursuit of the perpetrator, the identification, people try and find out the story about them.
They've been in contact. Well, MI5 has been
in touch with them or whatever, and then you get the heroism. You get the people like Tobias Ellwood MP, who yesterday, whose face was bloodied as he tried to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to the police officer who eventually died. Tobias Ellwood, of course, being an MP who lost his own brother in the Bali bombings of 2002. And there's that amazing image that Theresa May has of how he and others ran towards the danger rather than away. But there is this story does kind of conclude, and I'm sure is what the weekend's papers will be full of, Jasveer, a search for answers and meaning and solution, and people wondering how on earth it could be that this was allowed to happen. I'm asking you, has there been areas of policy, has there been a wrongness of approach in terms of refugees policy, in terms of multiculturalism, where Britain has invited in or allowed to flourish, even if they're British born, people over here who do not have Britain's interests at heart?
Well, firstly, I think we need to address the fact that, as far as we've been led to believe, this is not an issue of a refugee. So I think we should kind of firstly get rid of that notion that we're bringing in that mindset, because when we look back at 7/7, they were all British born, unless I'm wrong, or they were at least living in this country for a long time. And I live in Southall. I've gone to school with somebody that ended up being a suicide bomber. If you Google Southall terrorists, you'll see page after page about people in Southall that have been, linked or arrested for such issues. It's something to do with being disconnected from society. And when we look at, I don't want to name these kind of media organizations, but when we see some of the most popular newspapers in the UK constantly poking at the Muslim community and kind of distancing them from the rest of us, and even putting up pictures of Muslims and saying this is what a terrorist looks like, without any pictures of anyone else, then you understand where the disconnect comes from. Now, obviously, that disconnect is then fueled with radicalism of preachers, of images from ISIS, of some sort of belief that perhaps they can and they should be allowed to kind of lash out in such a way that it doesn't matter if they kill people. But I think what needs to be addressed, the only thing that we can address, because I don't think that the British government or British society is going to reform the Quran, or whether they should or even need to, but what we should look at and focus on is that disconnect of British Muslims with British society.
Okay, and I mean that is an issue that we're going to be talking about lots on this show and other shows over the coming days. Jasveer Singh, thank you very much indeed.